What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Welcome to a late starting show, gang. Apologies about the delay there. Was just getting some stuff updated on the board. Had to swap out yet another Braves pitcher. Had to get the Vegas numbers updated, and start time just got away from me by a couple minutes there. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Hopefully everything was okay in the chat. Looks like it was. Good afternoon to Cujo, Andy, Dimitri, Lone Wolf, everybody else who's been hanging out waiting. So we're here to talk about a pretty exciting looking 10-game main slate that we've got tonight. We've got solid looking pitching up top. We've got some really interesting spots for bats. You can see that late game is popping with 5-run totals on both sides. The Athletics drawing a 5.5-run total, leading the slate in the stacks board, leading the slate in the power index. Home run pick came from that team today. Big call up with Nick Kurtz today. Major spot for the Athletics. I'm assuming they're going to get rostered. They're going up against Patrick Corbin. It looks like a really sweet spot. But we can see a couple 5-run plus totals on the board, a 4.98, a handful of 4.5s. A lot of really interesting looking spots for bats. Vegas board just got updated. Projections will get an update after the show is over. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe as we get started. The website is rotoscouts.com. I'm assuming everybody who's currently here knows about the site. Everything there is under $1 a day for access to all of it if you haven't heard yet. But check that out for subscriptions if you have not already. NBA and NHL for tonight's playoff slates already live up on the site for projections. So we got that taken care of. Early 6 p.m. start for the NHL tonight. 3-gamer in the NBA, 4-gamer in the NHL. So a lot going on over at Roto Scouts. Anyway, we'll plug that a little bit harder when there's more people here, hopefully later on. Let's kind of dive into this one. We're going to be talking fast. We're going to get through everything. Any questions, as always, drop them into the chat. They do help the show and make it better, in my opinion. So anything you guys are wondering about, thinking about. Congrats to Larry. Sent a nice little shout out on Twitter. Appreciate that. Anytime you guys hit something, feel free to shout it out on Twitter. Hit me on at Roto Scouts. Is the official handle. At DigitalB21 is just my personal nonsense one. But our guy Larry C popped for $500 yesterday. Hit third in the big mini max tournament after watching the show. He's got the wrong logo on the account, but we can't hold that against Larry. Larry's an old school awesome guy. But congrats. I love to see the win, buddy, and that's all you. Really happy that you got there. Looks like he came away with a lot of Max Meyer, which obviously was a monster yesterday, and some Francisco Lindor, which was pretty nice after watching the show. That helped him get over the top. Obviously, the Reds didn't come through yesterday. We didn't hit that late Giants game that I remember, but weaker night on my end, but congrats to Larry. Congrats to some other winners that I saw out there. The more people we pile on, the more we see those wins come through. That's the name of the game, is volume, like anything else. Let's get into it. Phillies, Mets. That total just went down by half a run. I'm still really intrigued by the Phillies bats. Griffin Canning definitely has been looking a little bit better, but has been vulnerable throughout his life to left-handed power bats, and the Phillies have at least 2 really good ones and a few other ones that I'm intrigued by. So kind of like the look of the Phils at 3.95. I'm hoping they go a little bit underappreciated. I liked them slightly better a couple minutes ago when they were above 4, but c'est la vie. Hopefully it goes back up to an 8. We don't sweat it. It just goes back to what's currently projected up on the site. Either way, Harper Schwarber I'm going to be interested in. Trey Turner I'm going to be interested in. On the Mets side, they're going up against Christopher Sanchez, who has been terrific pretty much out of the gate. Struck out 12 in his most recent start. So a lot of upside there. I kind of buy into the Mets being at a 3.6 run total. The Cards and the Braves. As mentioned, the Braves have changed out their starter a couple times. It is now some dude named Scott Blewett. I believe he's an opener. I think he's just acting as an opener role and going to pitch like 2 innings. I had it before as Nathan Wiles, who had jumped into that spot instead of somebody else who had been originally projected early this morning at like 9 a.m. So I think it's Scott Blewett on the mound to open. Has not cracked, I don't think, 2 innings so far this season. 2 1/3, 2 2/3. So maybe we're getting like a 3-inning opener. But it's not a pitching spot. But I did update, and I'll update again for the Cards bats in that one. And I think they're going to look at least moderately interesting there. And then the Braves are drawing a fair run total, but it's going up against Andre Palante, who has that interesting impact on the power up side. So it's going to be about sweet sequencing for the Braves, unless they can come away with a mistake home run against Belanti. That said, he has given up one in 3 out of his 4 starts this season. A little bit of uncharacteristic home run output against him so far. So maybe we catch him again, but typically that's going to favor a team that can sequence well, and it's not exactly the Braves game. So I'm a little skeptical about that 4.92 implied total, but it's the Braves. I'm always interested in their upside bats. The White Sox against the Twins. Davis Martin on the mound for the White Sox, pushing a pretty healthy total toward the Twins at 5.29, one of the more highly ranked teams, one of the more highly projected teams. We can get some power out of that spot. Davis Martin does have a little bit of talent, but he's not a big strikeout pitcher. He's not a big velo pitcher, so gettable starter there. And then it's Bailey Ober on the mound, looking pretty strong going up against that weak White Sox lineup. 3.32 implied total for them tells you what you need to know on that spot. The Dodgers and the Cubs are playing their 3rd series of the season, which is kind of weird to have those two teams have competed that many times already. But here we are. It's Shota Imanaga on the mound for the Cubbies. It's Dustin May on the bump for the Dodgers. Like the looks of May, but there's definitely runs on both sides. 4.66 implied total for that Dodgers offense, and on the other side, 4.44 for the Cubs. And in Wrigley, you can always tell by the run line where we're looking as far as the conditions there. With run totals like that against these two pitchers, that means it's a juicy upside environment for offense, and not a day where the wind's blowing in like crazy and we're limited to 3 and change runs. The Rockies at the Royals. The top pitcher of the day is Chris Bubich, which just feels weird coming out of my mouth, but there it is. Big benefit from facing the Rockies, obviously, but he's also looked good to start the season. You got to give him a little bit of credit for how he's looked, for what the stuff has looked like. We'll get into it a little bit. 3.13 implied total is very low for the Rockies, but deservedly so. Nearly a 5-run total on the other side for the Royals is really interesting, going up against Ryan Feltner, another team that's one of the more highly projected options of the day. In the next game up, it is Chris Bassett against Ronald Blanco. 8-run total there, kind of even up. 4.17, 3.92 implied total for 2 usable teams, but 2 teams who we just kind of know what they are. They're low strikeout. There are a couple of upside power bats. There's some decent mid-board type options on both of those squads. The Blue Jays are more top heavy than the Astros. We'll get into it, but I think usable parts on all sides in that one. You could definitely get away with Bassett. You could definitely get away with some Ronel Blanco, even though I'm not a big fan. And I think you could go either way with the bats in that one. Pirates and the Angels. The Angels, another team at nearly a 5-run total. They're going up against Bailey Falter, drawing a ton of power there around Mike Trout and some of the usual suspects. Love the upside for some Angels power bats. I like the idea of combining them in Oakland. I like the idea of maybe drawing one of those Phillies lefties as a one-off in that stack. Kind of figure out where my placeholder might be right now. But the Angels are looking mighty interesting against Bailey Falter. And then the Pirates, there's a couple scrappy bats in there, but Jose Soriano pretty good at limiting power and has seen an uptick overall in stuff, at least to start the season. Last time out was only okay. He gave up 10 hits, 3 earned runs, and only struck out 2. Kind of a bumpy start there, but had a 9 strikeout game against Cleveland, 4 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts, but went 7 innings in 2 different games, gave up 1 earned run across 2 games, one against the White Sox, 1 against the Rays. So an effective enough pitcher for my money against a lower middle class type Pittsburgh team, I would say. The Rays at the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks, one of the strongest totals on the board at 5.14. They're going up against Zach Littell. Drawing a bunch of upside in the Diamondbacks lineup for sure. They're still suffering a little bit in terms of how they average out without Ketel Marte's numbers in there. But I went in, I made sure that Geraldo Perdomo is drawing his appropriate numbers now. Pavin Smith, I went in just on the back end, and I did this with a few guys. I had to add Nick Kurtz to the projections overall, so I took the opportunity to go in and just give a few guys a bump in the number of plate appearances they were projected to see. There were a couple guys like Luke Keeschall wasn't projected to come up nearly this early, so I had to add a bunch of plate appearances for him. So that has a trickle-down effect, and you'll see it come through in the projections. So the Diamondbacks elevated to, I think, the correct numbers, and they are middle of the board, despite that healthy total. So it's an interesting spot DFS-wise for them. Brewers and the Giants. This one doesn't look nearly like it did last night, but it's Jose Quintana, who is a pretty vulnerable pitcher on the mound for the Brewers. And then they're going up against Jordan Hicks on the mound. So gettable spots on all sides, but low run totals in that game. Brandon Pfaadt's on the mound Pfaadt is on the mound for the Diamondbacks, by the way. And then we get to the big game at the end of the night. It's Osvaldo Bido, who is at least good at suppressing power, but the Rangers are drawing a 5.08, 5.09 implied total against, and then a 5.5 run total for the leading team of the day going up against Patrick Corbin. The one thing I'll say there is a lot of lefties in that Oakland lineup that are relevant bats. The home run pick of the day from that team was not a lefty. Take a look at the pitching board. Bunch of people wandered in the meantime. Carlos Soto's here. Male Nurses Rock. What's been going on, guys? Your cockatiel loves my voice. Yes, I make the birds go crazy. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Hit the like, subscribe to the channel. Sip your coffee, and let's look at some pictures. Resort this. Some of these might have changed. Ooh, those guys are tied now. Some slightly different numbers across the board. Dustin May actually climbing the board slightly. This is just off the update that I just did for the Vegas numbers. So you've got basically a three-way tie up top now with May, Bubic, and Sanchez all looking pretty solid and separated by 6/100ths of a fantasy point on DraftKings. There's a tiny, tiny bit more separation favoring Chris Bubic on the FanDuel slate, but it's extremely close. They're all essentially the same. What you'll note is how high priced Chris Bassett a few spots further down the board is going up against Houston. I just don't like that spot at the price. I think Houston's more gettable than they've been over the last few years, but there's still some deadly good hitters in there, and there's still low strikeout enough going up against a medium grade strikeout pitcher like Chris Bassett. What he does give you typically is depth, but if you take away, the little bit of upside for facing a pretty good Houston lineup, that could limit the depth to which he pitches, and just not a great fit with all three of these upside pitchers at a little bit cheaper on both sites. All three of them, a couple $100 cheaper on the DraftKings slate. A little bit more impact being able to get to Dustin May at 91 versus the 10.6 that FanDuel wants for Chris Bassett. It's a little bit closer on Bubic and Sanchez, but there's a definite disparity there. Getting Bailey Ober against the White Sox for just 89 on FanDuel is very appealing. And at 6,900 on DraftKings, that's absurd. For Bailey Ober's talent going up against this AA lineup that the White Sox have, that's a stupid broken price. Roster the hell out of that. He should be extremely, extremely popular at that price, I'm guessing. Let me pull up DraftKings projected ownership on our pals over here. That's got to be huge. Let's see. Number 2 projected pitcher in more than a third of all lineups. And deservedly so at that price. I mean, that is the A+ SP2 of the day. So fire away with Bailey Ober shares. Just know he's going to be very popular. To differentiate with bats, it's extremely, extremely easy. Brandon Pfaadt, I think there's plenty of upside there, 92.82. He's not safe, not against a team with a little bit of pop in the lineup, but there are definitely Ks to be had in that lineup, 92, and those are reasonable prices, especially with some of the other guys on the board slightly higher. I expect that Pfaadt will fall a little bit by the wayside by comparison to some of these other names, so definitely an interesting pitcher today. Jose Soriano against the Pirates, 8,300 on DraftKings is a great price for that opportunity. Again, he can suppress power, can find his Ks against that lineup. 7 clean innings would not be a surprise there. Imanaga, I'm a little bit less interested in, despite projecting fairly well. I just, on a deep slate, given the opportunity at basically the same price to duck the Dodgers with a pitcher, I just kind of feel like, why not? Why would we go to that share? So probably going to be low owned. That would be the one attribute you get there, but it's a super high danger spot. Seems very avoidable. Quintana at 86 and 8,000. Again, projects well because there are Ks, and that's a very low run total in that game in San Francisco tonight, but not a high-end starter. Those prices seem a little bit off. Feels like he should be in the low 7s on DraftKings, mid upper 7s on FanDuel. Feels like he's 1,000 more expensive than he ought to be on both sides. Ronald Blanco, on the other hand, even though there's not that many strikeouts in the Toronto lineup, even though I think he's a guy who overperformed his talent last year and got a little bit overrated for it, the way he projects out, like the model doesn't care about any of that. He projects out just fine for 71, 76. So I do think there's a little bit to cling to there. I do think Griff Canning is playable. 81.79 does not really reflect some of the decent upside starts. And he's been an okay starter over time as far as chasing some strikeouts. He's just always had a problem with power. So it's a really interesting spot at those prices, the way that this board falls. I think he's a usable SP2 when you're not going to the super discounted over. I think it's viable to grab cheap and go like, him and Bailey Ober or him and Ronel Blanco and just get really cheap and go to some real extreme upside bats. Obviously, you're leaving a lot on the board. They're going to have to get their jobs done. But there's no reason in the world to think that these two, there's no true ace on this slate, period. So there's no reason in the world to think that, Blanco and Canning couldn't lead the slate, or more likely Ober and one of those guys. Damn it. So I do think there's value in making some different combinations through that like middle range there, those orange and yellow guys on the DraftKings side. And then we get into some shakier options. And by the way, Canning, not at all safe. Again, we could see the bad version of Griff Canning pop his head up and have that head just get lopped off by the big bat of Kyle Schwarber. So that is very much in play. Schwarber projects for a 14-something, I think, in the home run model today. Littell against Arizona with them drawing such a high total, I'm not that interested in, but he does have a little bit of talent. We haven't seen much of it this season so far. And with that team at 5+ and with some talent there and their ability to just get on base and scrap out runs, I don't love the Littell spot. Jordan Hicks, again, benefiting from that low total. There's some strikeout in that Brewers lineup. Mix and match piece. Davis Martin doesn't seem like a spot to tangle with given where Vegas has the Twins, but there are some strikeouts there. If you're in the vein of rostering a soft tosser who may or may not come away with 4 strikeouts and is more likely to give up 6 runs, 6,700 is at least a good price for it. Osvaldo Bido at 72, the probably lowest mix and match piece. I think Palante is actually a little bit more interesting than Bido is, because there's a little bit more strikeout in that Braves lineup to chase with Palante. He's a very low strikeout pitcher, but if you can get a little bit of safety out of his ability to check power, you can get a little bit of depth out of him. Maybe he comes away with 5 strikeouts instead of 3 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts instead of 4 strikeouts. Bido, medium grade strikeout pitcher, has the ability to check power as well. He does have that those same attributes, but the Rangers lineup has more upside for sequencing, more upside for limiting Ks. So I don't love that spot, 78, 72. I think I prefer Palante, but I also don't think we need to dip down to this part of the board. And then Falter, no. Feltner, no. Corbin, no. And the opener, no. Fair enough. Could be chat says, if you look at a Bassett sweeper and curveball, he's getting a lot more movement. Don't think he's a 33% strikeout guy, but the bump might be somewhat legit. And look, Bassett's always been a at least moderate strikeout pitcher. Yeah, 33%, 13.6% swinging so far, 30% CSW. Last year, 22.2. The year before, 22.5. So right around the average and very, very consistent over the last couple of seasons. 8.7, 9.4, 10.0. That's worth a look. Oh, you know what? So his location plus number is really strong this year, 105. That's up from 97 last year, 99 the year before. The stuff plus mark right around where it was the last 2 years. It was 98. This year so far it's 97, but moderate difference there. 2 pitches working above average. And then where's the StatCast board? The whiff on the sweeper is up 7.5 points year over year so far. And the curve, we're up another 6 percentage points, the whiff rate. So, strong uptick on both those pitches for sure. It's a good call out. Not getting any more spin on them. With slight uptick in spin. curve is 22.9. 24. Curve actually a little bit less spin. Let me stop staring at these things that you guys can't even see and get back into talking about the show. So, yeah, good call out there, Trav, for sure. But let's get back to the game by game. Again, we are going to move through this. I realize it's 4:45. I still got to build lineups later. So with this total dropping to 7.5, both these teams now down below 4 runs. The Mets at 3.63. Like I said, more belief in Chris Sanchez than Griff Canning so far. Canning's been decent, 3.43 ERA with a 3.63 xFIP, 23.9% strikeouts, but still walking too many. Hasn't really been as vulnerable to the power yet in the 4 starts so far. 2.27% home run rate, but you can see right where the hard hits and the exit velo are. 52.6 is 12.5 points above the line that we're looking at as a problem. Usually it's 40%. We're 2.7 miles an hour over the problematic mark. It's not like he's a ground ball pitcher, really. 14.3 degree average launch last year, 4.19% home run rate, 4.10% home run rate the year before on a 12.8. Tons of barrels allowed. Very vulnerable to lefties. So I don't know. I question anything about Griff Canning being a super improved pitcher other than the Mets are a very, very sharp organization as far as working things out with pitchers, up and down the organization. So I give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt there, but my belief in the pitcher is shaky. And I think against the Phillies, it's an ideal team to exploit that. Just look at the lefties at the top of the lineup. You've got Bryson Stott with the great hit tool, get on base. Trey Turner is going to have a strong hit tool against anybody, and there's a little bit of power, a little bit of speed upside. And then you get Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, two of the top power hitting lefties in the game. Schwarb's at a 16.32 now, and Harper at a 12.61 in the home run model. You've also got the upside of Nicky Castellanos, Max Kepler, who hits from the left side and is very affordable down lineup. JT Realmuto. This is a very, very strong 9-man Phillies lineup. It's also a team that draws walks. 10.7% walk rate so far for this version of the lineup. Last year, 7.8%. A little bit disappointing down lineup from guys like Johan Rojas, who was a 3% the year before that. So maybe you get a little bit limited down there. But the key point is everybody from 7 up draws their walks and does so pretty regularly. So don't think it's at all a safe spot for Canning, but at 81.79, I do think he's playable because there's a little bit of strikeout upside in this lineup as well. You can get on the right day multiple shots at guys like Schwarber and Harper. It's just they also have immense walk and home run upside. 21.7% strikeout rate for this lineup overall. They're not exactly vulnerable to Ks, but he's talented enough to go find them if he's got everything working. Sanchez is just good. 2.96 ERA, 2.54 xFIP so far this year, 30.7% strikeout rate with a 15.5 on the swinging strikes, 33% CSW. Last year showed a lot of strength, but didn't have nearly the same strikeout rate overall. So he's just putting away more hitters in the small sample early. You can see the monster uptick in stuff plus for him so far year over year. And this is something that people were watching coming out of spring camp. So this was something that was very real, demonstrable over now 4 real starts and a handful of spring starts, that there is a real live uptick here. So he's a pitcher that they're excited about in Philly. He's a pitcher that a lot of the pitcher watchers out there online are kind of interested in. 7 innings in his last start, 2 earned runs, 3 runs total on 4 hits. That was against the Giants. Struck out 12 in that game. Gave up a home run. Struck out just 3, walked 2 in his second in 2 games back. That was against St. Louis. Allowed 8 hits, but only 1 earned run. Really just 1 bumpy start. He gave up 4 earned runs on 6 hits over 5 2/3. That was against the Dodgers. Still struck out 9 in that game, walked 1, but gave up 2 home runs. Other than that, other than a little bit of blip for power there, there's really not a lot to attack. He's also an extreme ground ball pitcher, an extreme low trajectory pitcher, 2.4 degree average launch last year, 3.9 the year before. So last year he was spectacular at limiting power, missing premium contact, limiting home run potential. This year, again, the little blip with power in the 4-game sample, but nothing to sweat. 8,700 is a great price for this pitcher against a team that is a little bit home run oriented. They can sequence up toward the top, but they definitely focus on power with the Mets. You can see you do still have several guys creeping through because 2 years ago, Chris Sanchez wasn't as good at limiting power, and the model has a long memory. So there's upside. It's kind of coming in between. So I think you can roster Mets bats against despite that low total. But gun to my head, out of the 4 corners in this game, Chris Sanchez is probably the most interesting. If you're looking at the Mets, Francisco Lindor, obviously off the top, up to 5 home runs now, over 100 plate appearances. We're at 284, 340, 500, 216 ISO, 134 WRC plus. You see how quickly things normalize or correct themselves for very good players, I should say. We're not normalized yet. Juan Soto, speaking of not normalized, 244 is going to change. 370 on base, 415 slug, 353 xWOBA shows us where the upside is. That said, kind of underperforming his talent overall still. Not barreling the ball, which is noteworthy for a player who is spectacular at barreling the ball. 13% 2 years ago, 19.7% with a 56.8% hard hit last year, down to 5.8 or 5.9% in the small sample of batted ball events this year. Not at all concerned about Juan Soto. Take advantage of the $500 discount over there, the $100 to $300 discount over here. Pete Alonso at 55.42 is a priority. 6 home runs on the board, 487 xWOBA, 354 ISO. He's been mashing 21+% barrel rate, 58% hard hits. Vientos hasn't gotten it going, nor has Starling Marte. They're both sub Mendoza to start the season. Well under 300 on base is concerning. Well under 300 xWOBA is concerning. Well, slightly under 300 xWOBA is concerning. And very minimal run creation because of those factors. They look very much the same so far, and they're two very different players. It's probably more concerning for Vientos. But you give them the benefit of the doubt big time, and they're cheap for their potential. Marte more as a counting stat collector, mid-grade home run power, a little bit of stolen base upside. Vientos as a masher when he's going right. There's tons and tons of home run power there. 9.63 is nothing to sneeze at in the model. Luis Torrens, Tyrone Taylor, Luis Angel Acuna, Jose Azocar down the lineup. Mix and match pieces galore. You can definitely probably prioritize Luis Angel just because he's the highest end talent there, and filling second base from this lineup at 3,400 if you're going to this team makes a lot of sense. 2,500 over here, less of a priority where you only get 4 men. Then you just want to stick up toward the top, I think. But if you're building a bunch of Met stacks, you can definitely dip down that way. Then I would probably go Tyrone Taylor as the second highest priority, just a cheap outfielder right from the right side of the plate who does see historical success against lefties. Mix and match, though. There's not a ton of quality down in those bottom 4, with apologies to Mr. Acuna. And if you're going fills, again, you're prioritizing those guys there. I kind of flew through it while I was talking about the pitcher. But it's a full 9-man lineup. Real Muto is a spectacular option at catcher on DraftKings where you need the position. Only 4,000 is very, very cheap for him. Striking out a little bit more than we're used to so far in the small sample. Just 1 home run, but 4 steals. It's good that he's running again. He was more limited for stolen bases last year. Kepler's got a lot of upside as a cheap outfield bat with 7.97. Get that lefty in your lineup. If you're building Philly stacks, he's an interesting left-handed power bat that will be a lot lower owned than these two in the outfield. Castellanos from the right side, plenty of power there, 9.1% barrels, 289, 348, 470 start to his season, a 356 xWOBA. Definitely an interesting player. And then, boom, very, very playable with just his bat-on-ball skills against this pitcher. We haven't seen a ton of them so far this season in terms of actually delivering, but an 8.1% barrel rate, a 51.4% hard hit rate looks a lot like him. The low strikeout, low walk rate looks a lot like him. Think he'll be fine. So again, Chris Sanchez, Phillies bats. No, I'm sorry. Chris Sanchez, Griff Canning, Phillies bats, Mets bats. It's very close between Griff Canning and the Phillies bats. I don't want to put them on top because they're below a 4-run total. It's really the only thing stopping me. Could be the day that Griff Canning goes pop. In years past, this would be a day we were targeting Griff Canning with those bats. Cardinals, 418 implied total. The Braves drawing a 492 going up against Andre Pallante. As mentioned at the beginning of the show, that's really interesting because you can see the impact that Pallante has on those power bats. He basically halves everybody's power marks. Typically, this trio of hitters in particular, like yesterday, they were all at like 12. Typically, they're all at least at 9 and usually over 10, over the magic number. And then you see a lot more power through this lineup. Against Pallante, his main attribute is keeping the ball down. Negative 0.8 degree average launch so far this year. He's made a couple mistakes. He's lost, as I said, a single home run in 3 out of 4 games so far this year. Last year, over 121 and a third innings in 20 starts, just a 1.57% home run rate that came on a 1.1 degree average launch. He's good at keeping the ball in the yard. If you take the primary attribute away from this team, we're talking about a team that's, all right, they're okay up here in this sample. in terms of sequencing. That comes to a 377 on base, but we thin out real quick going down that lineup. These are, again, small samples, but that's a 272 for those bottom 5 hitters. Now, Ozzie Albies at 309, that's about where he's normally at. Michael Harris is way low at 239, but for all of last year, he was only at 306. If you want to do those same hitters, all of last year in much larger samples, 288. Top end, 332. So these guys, I believe, underperformed a little bit last year from where their talent is. These are more like their real numbers, except for the 481, of course. 381 is more accurate. But that bottom end, those low performances are kind of real. So it's concerning on a day where you're saying, all right, yeah, the Braves going to pull 5+ runs. How are we getting there? If we're taking a home run away, and this team could easily find a home run on any mistake that Palante makes, but it shaves down our likelihood, shaves down our probability of this necessarily going off for DFS scoring the way we would need it to if we made it our primary stack. So despite the appealing run total, I'm not as compelled to go to Braves, which is a team that we always get to when they're looking at all appealing. Not as compelled to go there today. The cards against now an opener, Scott Blewett. Looks like he is available on FanDuel, not available on DraftKings. I didn't bother doing anything with the numbers again. I just think it's going to be like 2, maybe 3 innings of him, and then we just hand off to the bullpen, or maybe it's to the other kid that was in here earlier today. But I don't see any real upside. 28.9% Ks over 9 innings of entirely relief work. He's been good out of the pen. 18.7% swinging strike rate is pretty spectacular. 4 strikeouts over 2 2/3 against the Reds the other day. That was 4 days ago on the 18th, so he's not even on any kind of full starters rest either. So you're not going there. What maybe we're not doing, though, is drawing too much of the cards either. Pretty low home run marks. He has not allowed a barrel in his 9 innings. He has allowed a lot of exit velo and a lot of hard hits on an extreme fly ball trajectory. Somehow that is not equal to barrel, which is really surprising. No home runs allowed yet. Stuff Plus doesn't love the arsenal. This Stuff Plus doesn't really jibe with that swinging strike rate either. It's weird results. Last year, 20 1/3 all in relief. This looks a lot more like the pitcher that I see over here. 1.77 ERA, but a 4.14 xFIP, just a 21% strikeout rate. Still a high swinging strike rate, but not nearly as high. A lot of power allowed. Just a 2% home run rate, though. Again, kind of weird. That's having an impact here a little bit. But I just don't love this Cards lineup. We've talked about it a lot. Lars Nootbaar off the top is a good player. 45.34, not a bad price for him. 3 homers, 2 steals. Interesting DFS bat with a 373 xWOBA, telling us there's more to come. He's already created runs 18% better than average. Hits the ball very hard. Finds his barrels. Low strikeout, high walk. He's an appealing guy. And then you get Wilson Contreras, who I've talked about a bunch. Loses his appeal without catcher eligibility on DK. He's just an average to, okay first base bat. 2,600 with meaningless catcher eligibility on FanDuel. At least you get a great price. But he's out of the gate with 2 home runs, a stolen base. A 311 xWOBA supports the upside that we know is there from just what we've seen from this player over time. But he's currently at 182, 234, 295. We're closing in on 100 plate appearances. It's not a concerning sample size yet, but it's also not nothing. Nolan Gorman moving to the 3 spot against this right-handed opener, and then whatever else is kind of interesting. 21.7% barrels for Gorman so far. He's hit a home run, 258, 332, 452. It's probably as high as we'll see him all season. 389 xWOBA and creating runs 11% better than average. The issue with Gorman's always going to be the case. So far this year, we're only at 25% over 36 plate appearances. Last year, 37.6. Year before, 31.9. Anybody can strike this guy out, especially with these kind of numbers. The first time we're going to see him, at least, makes it concerning. High probability of a strikeout for Nolan Gorman. If he turns on one, there's a pretty decent chance of a home run. He's probably your biggest upside bat for power in this lineup now. Arenado, talked about that swing being completely busted. 282, 385, 449, and on the decline. 302 xWOBA, 131 WRC plus, 2 homers on the board. I'm thinking he doesn't finish the year with more than, let's say, 12 home runs. Alec Burleson hasn't barreled the ball yet this year, hasn't been interesting in any way, shape, or form this year. That kind of applies to the entire bottom of the lineup. Maxed out at 2 home runs for Jordan Walker so far. He's at 215, 271, 304, 246 xWOBA. Nobody above a 269 xWOBA down there. Nobody with a positive run creation mark. That's what I mean about this team just not being that good. I don't see the appeal all that much outside of just taking shots against what has the makings of a bullpen game. If you're going to the Braves against Verdugo, I really am not a fan of, but given the spot in the lineup, he does get interesting as a helpful piece to average the pricing down of these guys. They're not crazy highly priced, but when you put them all together, that is a block of fairly high prices. Moderately high. But for the players, man for man, those are each a couple $100 cheap also. Same thing on FanDuel where you're getting 4. You're probably just drawing these guys. Verdugo's not good now, has never been good. Over these 18 plate appearances, he was fine. He created runs 8% better than average. He did have a 390 xWOBA, hit a few balls hard. Give him time, he will very quickly normalize to these numbers from last year. Austin Riley, tons of power upside, 25.4% barrel rate. If you're rostering Braves, you prioritize Austin Riley's bat. 6 home runs on the board, looking a lot more like the Austin Riley who hit 30-plus home runs 3 years running before last year. Was injured, missed some time last season, looking great so far this season. Marcell Ozuna at just 45.39. 45 is very cheap for that bat on DraftKings. 39 is correct. I don't know why DraftKings has him low. He's just continuing what he was doing last year. He's at 323, 481, 548. He's got a 438 xWOBA. He's created runs 89% better than average. He's hit 4 home runs. What does a guy need to do to draw a full price? Matt Olson at 45, 3,000. Another very cheap bat with tons of power upside. Ozzie Albies, super playable second baseman. 48's getting up there for his current level of performance, but we trust in Ozzie Albies' talent to pay off that price more often than not. 32 is a bargain for him on FanDuel. And then you get Michael Harris, Sean Murphy, Jared Kelenic, 3 bats with tons of upside. Murph, as an individual catcher, fire away. 5 home runs in just 46 plate appearances so far. He's been mashing since rejoining the lineup. He hasn't given you much else, but there's a true power bat there. Harris does give you across-the-board stats. So far, pretty weak slash line. 3 home runs, 4 steals, weak WRC+. Kelenic, you're just hunting for that premium contact. 12.1% barrels is the noteworthy stat right now. Everything else is pretty ugly. Braves, Palante, Cards bats at the bottom, and I wouldn't roster whatever the Braves are planning on doing on the mound. Cards bats not really that appealing. Braves bats definitely in play, but again, that requirement for them to sequence today has me a little bit concerned about not reaching that run total, but like 5 doesn't get us where we need to be, especially with the lack of power. If they scratch out 5 runs today, you're not winning a tournament with that stack. So we obviously need significantly more than that. I like their chances of getting to that number a lot more than I like their chances of putting up like 8-10 runs against Palante and hitting us 3 home runs. Here's Bailey Ober. So we touched on him earlier. No, I'm sorry. That was Chris Bassett. Getting my mediocre starters mixed up. Bailey Ober, ugly to start the season. 6.16 ERA. Some lingering nastiness in that number. He gave up 8 earned runs in his first start. That was over 2 2/3. Came out after that 4 innings of 1-run ball, 6 innings of 1-run ball, 6 1/3 of 3-run ball. So he's been fine in those starts. He's looked relatively like Bailey Ober. 5 Ks, 4 Ks, 5 Ks. Has allowed power. 2 home runs again in the most recent game. He gave up 2 home runs in that first one. So he's allowed 5 home runs so far on the season. 5.88% home run rate, 9.8% barrels. It's going to take a while for that to go away fully. But he's a better pitcher than these numbers. The 11.9% swinging strike rate is encouraging. The depth of his average start is usually encouraging. 6 1/3, 6 in the last 2. So you got a decent shot at least your quality start. Got a decent shot at an upside start, given his 26.9% strikeout rate from last year, 25.3 from 2 years ago. He's good at limiting walks, good at keeping guys off base, better than he's been this year, and he's already been fine or above average for swinging strikes, 14.2 last year for swinging strikes, 3.98 ERA with a 3.83 xFIP. He's always going to give up some runs. Does have a little bit of an issue with power. He's a fly ball pitcher, so happenstance can burn him a lot. 3.81% home run rate last year, the exact same mark the year before. Fair amount of barrels, tons of fly balls on a 20.4 degree average launch, 20 degree average launch the year before, but minimizes the damage via, kind of limiting the hard hits, limiting the exit velo. So far this year, that hasn't been totally in place. But again, I believe that most of this is just going to be happenstance in the end. He's going up against the most gettable team in baseball, 332 implied total for them. Vegas is on our side. He ranks out very strongly on the board. And as mentioned at the beginning of the show, 6,900 is a stupid, broken, incorrect price on DraftKings. That's a free SP2. Just take advantage. He's easily 1,500 too cheap. In this matchup, even if it doesn't work out, he could go out there and give up 8 runs in the first inning and be out of the game by the end of the first inning. If you played him today, you were correct, regardless of what that result looks like. 89 on FanDuel is a different story. He's appealing there, but he's kind of just one of the gang at that price on FanDuel. Projects out great, is cheaper than those 3 guys. Dustin May has probably a little bit more upside for the additional $200. You can make arguments for some of these other guys, but definitely very firmly on the board at that price because it is a couple bucks lower and he's going up against the worst team in baseball. Davis Martin, I think we just kind of skip over 13.1% strikeouts, a 4.84 ERA with a 4.75 xFIP so far this season. Last year did strike out 21.4% hitters, had a decent rating by Stuff Plus. Like I said, he does have noteworthy stuff, but he's a soft tosser, a spot hitter, and like a change of speeds guy, and just doesn't have a ton of appeal in this spot. There are some Ks in this Twins lineup, but there's also a threat of power. If you're going to just be allowing a lot of contact up there, I really don't love it. He's at 10% barrels, 50% hard hits, a 92 mile an hour average exit velo so far. Just doesn't feel like the day. 5 1/3 last time out, gave up 4 earned runs, 2 homers, 3 strikeouts. Did have a 6 strikeout game. That was against the Red Sox. Pitched pretty clean, that one. 1 earned run over 6 hits, over 6 innings. Walked 1, struck out 6. Allowed 7 earned runs over 5 innings at Detroit. That was a problem. 9 hits, 2 home runs allowed, struck out 2, walked 2. Location plus grades out at 102, but Stuff Plus grades out at 95, 94.5 if you're not rounding up. Just seems skippable at 67.74. Think we can get to some Twins bats with their 5.29 implied total. Think we can skip some White Sox bats. They've been scratching out some runs here and there. No Chase Meadroth. He's out with a injured thumb. Lou Bob in the lineup at 42.29 is always going to be at least a little bit interesting at those low prices, given what his talent is. But right now, 145, 268, 246, not really getting it done. Starting to heat up a little bit, it seems like, though. Finally finding his stroke a little bit at the plate. 2 homers on the board, 7 stolen bases. He's at least been filling some counting stats. But that's it. Andrew Vaughn, 26-26 across the board, 3 home runs, 152, 193, 291, 320 xWOB is at least encouraging. Tells us that the numbers will come around eventually, but he's only average to slightly below average. Edgar Quero is cheap at catcher, switch hitter. Over his 16 plate appearances, he's scratched out a couple ribbies. 332 xWOB is encouraging. 107 WRC plus is encouraging. Does have a little prospect pedigree there. One of my favorite hitters in the sport returned to the league, resurrected on Easter. Bobby Dahlbeck. Deadman priced at the bottom of the lineup on DraftKings, first and third base eligible, 2,100 first, third, and outfield eligible uniquely on FanDuel. If you're rostering the White Sox, put Bobby Dahlbeck in your lineup. Telling you now, 7.13 in your home run model, much more likely to strike out 3 times against Bailey Ober and then probably another time against the bullpen and then get pinch hit for. But the power upside is very, very real. 7.13 in the home run model is not incorrect. That's what, 3rd on this team? He's a priority bat on this team if you're going to this team. He's an oddball one-off that nobody's going to have. Bailey Ober's had a home run problem so far this year. Bailey Ober's a guy who's always given up home runs. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher. It's not the craziest thing in the world to me to one-off Bobby Dahlbeck at 2,000, 2,100 on FanDuel. Maybe that's a play only I'll make. We'll see. but it's not completely crazy. Dahlbeck's got a ton of power. That said, he's never been able to establish himself as a major league hitter. There's a reason that he's a fill-in who just got called up on the White Sox. But he's the only other appealing name in this lineup at all. Nick Maton, Andrew Benintendi, these are mix and match guys that you bolt on if you're desperate. If you go to the Twins, Edouard Julien off the top, 32-22. 22 is extraordinarily cheap for his upside. I hadn't noticed that. 11.4% barrels, 40.9% hard hits. Pretty much all you need to know is right there. He's hitting the ball on contact exactly like he has in the past when he's shown some upside for power. 327 xWOBA jibes with those numbers. The ISO's been low. The results have been poor. 217, 262, 333, one home run, a 71 WRC+. But you're getting him with his lefty bat, with his power upside, with those hard hits against a soft-tossing, high-contact, weak righty. Love the upside at 2,200 at second base. That's a free square. Dead min price Luke Keeschel, also at second base. Kind of sucks they're playing the same spot, but I like that bat at that price as well. Kid's got a very strong hit tool. That's what he's renowned for. So again, against a high-contact pitcher, just tons of high-value contact is worthwhile there. Putting him at 2,000 at second or util, and same thing with Edouard Julien, is an interesting way to build. Maybe it's a three-man, and you just go those two super cheap bats and Byron Buxton, and you get everybody for 2,600 apiece. You could include Larnach or Correa in the next two spots in that for very cheap prices there as well. That'll keep you at a $2,600 average with either of those hitters, and those are two interesting bats. Correa has underperformed his talent at 194, 256, 319, as has Larnach at 194, 298, 250. A little bit more power probably in the long term for Larnach, but Carlos Correa has always hit the ball very, very hard. I've highlighted his terrific half of the season from last year before the injuries, or I forget which side of the season the injuries were on, to be honest. But whichever, in a half a season, he had great numbers last year. Terrible 78 plate appearances this year. Buy the upside. Take him at a cheap price on both sides. Ty France has been decent. 2 home runs on the board, a 348 xWOBA, just 234, 314, 351. Has seen a little bit of a dip in the front end of the triple slash over the last few days, but there's been some upside there. He's been more interesting than I thought he'd be. Right-handed bat for a cheap price at first base. Not an ideal first base option. That's the thing. I don't love these line drive types at first base, but playable if you're dipping into the Twins a lot, and I think it's a day to probably do that. Ryan Jeffers at 35-26, tons of catcher upside, 5.40 in the home run model, just 3,500 on the DraftKings slate where you have to take a catcher bat. Why not fish for his first home run today? 367 xWOBA so far on the season. Last year in 465 plate appearances, hit 21 homers, had a 206 ISO. We know there's power there. Take the cheap price. Brooks Lee and Harrison Bader just kind of mix and match guys for cheap positionally. If you need them, they're there. But neither one of those guys is overly appealing. Bader has hit 3 home runs this season. 264 on the xWOBA, though, tells you how real or not real the front end of that is. Bailey Ober on DraftKings. Super high priority SP2. Twins bats on either site. Bailey Ober on FanDuel. Nothing from the White Sox unless you're just taking shots. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Sam says, great content. I assume that Sam was saying that like Tony the Tiger in that. Male Nurses Rock. What are we talking about? Could be Trav. I appreciate that. Tough loss for the Knickerbockers last night. Yeah. The Knicks did not come through last night. That was an unappealing game. Karl Anthony Towns disappeared in the second half. I thought they were going to get away with it too, with Jalen exploiting Aja Thompson. Like, Thompson was kind of locking Jalen down, and Jalen just kept drawing fouls against him and fouled him out early in the second half. And they just couldn't get over the top and take more than they eventually tied it. And then Dennis Schroeder, of all people, came down and knocked down a dead shot 3 with like a minute left. Silenced the Garden, and just they couldn't get back over the top. But, yep, that was a disappointing loss. It would be really ugly to lose to this Detroit team in the first round. Anyway, Dustin May, Shota Imanaga. Definitely talent on both sides here, but I prefer May given how the projections are seeing it. We've got a 22.5% strikeout rate on this confirmed version of the Cubs lineup. They are drawing a 4.5 total. We do have, what are the conditions actually like? I don't know why I Googled MLB DFS weather when I knew exactly where I wanted to go. Winds blowing out to center, but only around 5 miles an hour. So not an extreme upside game. So we're not seeing like 5 run totals there. But at 4.5, it's not one of those days where, the wind's not blowing in there. Mid-60s at game time. So just kind of a nice night in Chicago, but nothing overly beneficial about the conditions for bats, but not a day where the conditions are really working against these guys. You can see the home run upside at the top of the Dodgers lineup for yourself. 3 guys in the double digits in the home run model, plus Freddie Freeman has a ton of upside. Will Smith has a ton of upside. Andy Pages down lineup a few spots further. Going up against the lefty, there's a bunch of right-handed power in this lineup as well between Teoscar and Mookie and Will Smith and Pages. So a lot of upside for the Dodgers. I believe in their side of the equation a little bit more, even though I love this Cubs lineup, because I have faith in Dustin May's upside as a pitcher, top projected pitcher on the board. Just a 21.5% strikeout rate this season, but working to a 1.06 ERA so far at 3.29 xFIP. Spectacular 0.76 whip despite a 9.2% walk rate. Means he's getting a little bit lucky on BABIP. Hasn't allowed a barrel yet this season in 3 starts in 17 innings. Has been pitching and keeping the ball down on the ground. Hasn't allowed a home run yet. 30.3% CSW is nice. Even that's against the 10.2% swinging. So just working very, very effectively in the zone. 7 strikeouts last time out over 6 innings. That was against the Rockies. Just 1 strikeout, walked 3, gave up 3 runs, but only one of them earned on 3 hits over 6 innings against the Nationals at Washington. 6 strikeout game in his first outing over just 5 innings. 1 run on 1 hit against the Braves in his first start of the year. Another guy who benefits more from location, plus he's got absurd horizontal movement on some of his pitches. Just average on 1 pitch and slightly below on 3 other pitches in terms of his stuff plus number. But very effective with it and can make it work for a little bit more strikeout upside, I think, as time goes on. The fact that we're getting him at 6-inning depth already is encouraging as well. We've got a shot at our quality start that we kind of need today at 91 on FanDuel. 88 on DraftKings, a little bit more leeway maybe with the price, but definitely a good upside pitcher. Imanaga at 85, 88, also playable, but again, that Dodgers lineup is deadly. I just don't know why we would want to tangle with it. Imanaga not off to a strong start either. Over 5 starts, 28 and a third, 18.6% strikeouts. Just a 2.22 ERA, but a 4.85 xFIP is pretty telling underneath. He has induced a 14% swinging strike rate, but he's allowed a few barrels along the way. He's allowed a few home runs along the way. He's faced this Dodgers team just once in those starts. So that was in the Tokyo series back on the 18th. Went 4 in that game, struck out 2, but walked 4, no runs, no hits. Really only had 1 shaky start, 5 innings against the Rangers. He gave up 5 earned on 7 hits. He allowed 2 home runs, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk. So some up, some down. 2 of the starts he went 7. 1 of the starts he worked into the 8th, 7 and a third against the Padres. 4-hitter, 1 earned run, struck out 4, walked 0, but gave up a home run, the solo shot for the home run. So probably not pitching as poorly as some of this might suggest, but also not really finding his Ks and not the right team to go into with that kind of form. So we're looking Dodgers bats. Ohtani's obvious at 63.42. You take your shares of Ohtani and his 17.38. I think that's leading the home run model overall today. Monster shot at power. 6 home runs, 5 steals. Shohei Ohtani, don't overthink it. Mookie at 5,700, 3,900. Just more appealing on FanDuel given the 3-position eligibility, but it's Mookie Betts. Again, another guy, don't overthink it. Even with a 243 on the front end of that slash line, 356, 432 to round it out, a 189 ISO, 4 homers, 2 steals. 300 xWOBA is way lower than we would want it for Mookie, but it's Mookie Betts. Everything's going to be perfectly fine. 126 WRC plus, even with some underperformance. Teoscar Hernandez with an 11.31 is very interesting for his power upside, especially at just 4,900. Helps you bring the price down slightly for the full group. 5 home runs on the board, a 238 ISO, 317 xWOBA, 109 WRC plus. Doing his thing. The hard hits are down from 46.7 to 30.2% so far this year, but very small sample of batted ball events. I think we'll be fine. The barrels, same thing. Freddie looking a whole lot like Freddie Freeman with an increased barrel rate over year in the small sample. Just 46 plate appearances, but the power's been back a little bit. 4 home runs on the board, 468 xwOBA, 176 WRC plus. After a year that was somewhat in decline, maybe we just see Freddie put up more power with a little bit lower of a batting average. But I really like what we're seeing from Freddie right now. 54-36 makes sense. Tommy Edman is not the bat that the Dodgers have gotten. 7 home runs now on the board is just absurd. 284 ISO, 392 xwOBA. But there's no denying what he's been doing out there. Switch hitter, second base eligibility for just 41. 33 on FanDuel, second short in outfield. Definitely interesting if you're stacking Dodgers. Playable part, honestly, in like one-off situations as well. If you just need a one-off second baseman who's capable, Tommy Edman's there to grab. And he is actually in the lineup and actually hitting fifth today. We have this confirmed lineup now. So a little bit of a change. There it is. I was like, why is Max Muncy coming up as right-handed? That's not correct. There we are. 3,100 remains very cheap for Max Muncy as the 2,700. He is yet to homer this year. 191, 291, 265 is not a good start. But all you need to focus on with Max Muncy, and the reason I continue to believe, and I know somebody called him out in the chat like 2 weeks ago saying, oh, he's shot, he's washed. 14.6% barrels, 51.2% hard hits in the small sample. Drawing is 11% walks. Strikeouts are always going to be high with this hitter. They're 9 points higher than they're typically, but they're always going to be up there. 350 xwOBA. Everything's going to be fine. The power's going to come around. He's going to be there. Right now, he's just cheap. Just take advantage if you're going to the Dodgers. Reason to go to the Dodgers, priority bat if you're stacking Dodgers. And honestly, if you were to draw a 3-man of that to just take cheap Dodgers upside, I don't mind that at all. That's a $3,700 average for Tommy Edman, Will Smith, and Max Muncy. That's a great price for those 3 hitters. So while these guys are all expensive, those guys are cheap, and those guys help make these guys cheap. It's like even if you go there and then just to like here, or whoops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that brings your price down to $4,660 for a stack of 5-man that includes Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Tommy Edman, Will Smith, and Max Muncy for $4,660 apiece on a day where they're drawing a 4.5 run total with the wind blowing out at Wrigley Field. That is very affordable. On the Cubs side, there is definitely playability against Dustin May. They're drawing a 4.5 run total of their own. Ian Happ, very interesting despite the slow start. 245, 333, 343. The 349 xwOBA is appealing. The on base is already where it's supposed to be. He's a good run creator. He's not striking out. He's drawing his walks. Just hasn't made the super high quality contact that he typically does. I feel like that comes around over time as his timing clicks in. 4,400, 3,200. Definitely worth paying for at that price if you're going Cubs. Kyle Tucker at any price, 62.45, perfectly fine. 6 home runs, 4 steals, a 302, 404, 615 slash line so far, a 433 xwOBA. Kyle Tucker is an absolute smash spot. Absolute superstar is what I meant to say. Smash spot is debatable against this pitcher, but the top priority bat in that lineup. 53-35 for Seiya Suzuki. Very playable. 17.5% barrel rate so far. 6 home runs on the board, showing a little bit more home run upside this year. Tons of power upside. Great ability to drive the ball. Really like the hitter. 268, 351, 537. Kind of fits the mold of what the Cubs are looking for. Michael Busch, a lot of barrels and hard hits out of him as well. 5 home runs on the board. More importantly, a 316, 386, 608 start with a 368 xwOBA supporting it. 291 ISO so far. Michael Busch is looking like he's really come into his own so far this season. 5,000, 3,000 across sites. Worth paying for. The Cubs' home run numbers, though, are getting cut down somewhat by Dustin May's ability to keep the ball down. So bear that in mind. Dansby at 42.29. Tons of premium contact. That's back so far this year for Dansby. 8.8% barrels, 52.9% hard hits. Nice to see. The barrel's actually technically a little bit down. 4 home runs on the board, 2 stolen bases. The slash line is nowhere near where we wanted at 177, 223, 344. But the xwOBA suggests that we're returning to form and we'll get our production out of Dansby. So I think just a good shortstop option if you're going Cubs. Bottom of this lineup is not all that appealing, though, and it shortens their ability to sequence. You are getting improvement out of Pete Crow Armstrong, though. He's up to 258, 310, 462. Stable at 300 xwOBA with 3 home runs on the board, and a 204 ISO is interesting for that hitter. He's basically doing what they needed him to do as far as demonstrating some growth. Nico's a mix and match quality guy who maybe will steal a base. He's hitting 300 plus. He's getting on at a 349 clip. We're very proud of him. Miguel Amaya is a mix and match catcher. Gage Workman, is a very cheap option at third who is carrying a 391 xWOB over 12 plate appearances. So much for that. Dustin May, Dodgers bats, Cubs bats, and then and only then Shota Imanaga. I just don't think we're getting great value for our money going up against the Dodgers. $5.23. Danger the safety dog. Trying to decide between... not sure what you're trying to say there. Maybe clean that up and let me know what you're trying to say. My hope is that was supposed to be Schwarbs. It's dangerously close to a word you don't necessarily want to be using in public, unless you're of a very specific and undesirable mindset. But I don't think that's what you were trying to say. Schwarber looks like a great option, though. If that's who you were talking about, I love the upside for power for home runs. I was talking about it before when we broke down the Phillies. I don't know, at this point, like 45 minutes ago. But yeah, tons of power upside. He is the number 2 option, I think, on the board. Yeah, 16.32 is the number 2 option overall. Just behind Ohtani. You can see some of the A's power coming through as well. A lot of A's on the board. We'll get there. Colorado Rockies going up against Chris Bubic, who is off to a very strong start. 1.88 ERA with a 3.42 xFIP underneath it. That's more in line with what we would expect from Chris Bubic, but a 14.5% swinging strike rate is really interesting from this pitcher. 32.4% CSW is really interesting. He's a few barrels along the way, but really limiting hard hits and exit velo. It's okay on the launch. It's not a spectacularly low average launch, but 11.8 is manageable. Just a 0.97% home run rate. I would imagine that's 1 home run on the board. Yeah, 1 home run that he allowed to the Guardians at Cleveland in a otherwise good 6-inning start. Struck out 5, walked 2 earned on 6 hits, 3 runs total, 2 earned. It's an okay start. Start before that against the Orioles, 6 2/3 of one unearned run, over 4 hits. 8 strikeouts, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts in his first appearance. Last time out, a little bit shakier, 5 1/3 against the Yanks, 3 earned runs on 7 hits, struck out 6, walked 4, which is something to watch. But going up against the second worst team in baseball, one of the most gettable teams in baseball on the road out of their home park, it's a really appealing spot. Well, we don't have his recent sample really with Bubic. Back in 2022, he was at an 18.7% strikeout rate. And then we've only seen 3 starts and then 30 1/3 innings in relief work out of him over the last 2 seasons. So there hasn't been a ton to work with, but at least there's support in these numbers, these 30 1/3 from last year, that this might be real or at least somewhat sustainable. So that does give us like 50, 54 and a third innings there instead of just the 24, instead of just the 4 starts. So a little bit more support for the actual strikeout upside. You'll note that this current Rockies confirmed lineup is at a 35.7% strikeout rate, which is exceptionally high. We'll take out the 42.9 for Aaron Schunk over just 7 plate appearances. None of this is fair to do because these are still absurdly small samples, but strikeout rate is one of the things that normalizes quickest. And that's a 34.8% rate. Last year, same collection of hitters in a much more fair sample, 28.6%. Can I interest you in those strikeout rates against a pitcher who's currently inducing a swinging strike rate like these? Even this season, honestly, 14.7. It didn't come through putting hitters away in those 3 starts, those 16 innings, but it's there. Very interested in Chris Bubic. 8,900 looks spectacular on DraftKings. One of the highest projected pitchers, tied at the top of the board. 10,000 worth paying for on FanDuel. Ryan Feltner, hard no. 19.8% Ks, but walking 12%, 4.36 xFIP. The 12.3% swinging is appealing, but a 26.1% CSW, allowing home runs. Hasn't really been bad in terms of barrels or launch, but plenty of hard hits, exit velo, and you can take the ball out of the yard against them. I'm much more intrigued by this KC lineup, drawing nearly a 5-run total with all their upside for limiting strikeouts, for putting bat on ball, and for finding high quality bat on ball. Could be a nice day for Vinny Pasquantino, of all people, to break out. Like that upside. 3,800, 2,900 for Vinny is just too cheap. 7.6% barrels, right in line with where he's been the last 2 seasons. We want an increased barrel rate from Vinny to get more power, but what we really want is just his general quality to come back around. The strikeouts are a little higher than typically, up by about 6 points. The walks are right in line with where they normally are. Currently slashing 195, 264, 329, just a 289 XWOBA, but this is not the Vinny Pasquantino that we know and love. I talked about he was on like last week, I think it was at this point. But he was on one of the MLB shows talking about his swing and how he had increased bat speed kind of unintentionally over the offseason, and it was wreaking havoc with him. And it kind of is. You can see that in the numbers. But at those prices, I'm very interested in the upside against this pitcher. I think Jonathan India at 35.26 is very playable with his correlated scoring ability, given his on-base skills. 311 on base is not what we want out of him this year, but that should go up over time. He missed a couple of days. I like the correlated scoring option in tandem with Bobby Witt, with Vinny Pasquantino, with Sal Perez and all his power upside. Sal's just got 2 home runs on the board, but the 384 xWOBA suggests that will be coming around. So does the 16.4% barrel rate so far this season, 47.8% hard hits. Sal is just inexpensive for his talents, particularly where you need catchers. 3,800 with catcher eligibility on DraftKings. Very appealing. You can play him and Vinny in the same lineup over there because of that catcher eligibility. Love the option. Michael Garcia has been interesting. 58.3% hard hits, 6.7% barrels. I was looking for that power increase from him. Low strikeout rate. He's increased his walks in the small sample this year. 278, 354, 417, 368 xWOBA to suggest that it's potentially real, that the bat on ball could be actually coming through finally. I love the upside. Oddly, only stolen 2 bags in 82 plate appearances. This is a kid who swiped, 40-something? 37 last year, despite getting on at just a 281. So monster uptick in on base, fewer stolen bases. Figure that out. But he's a really interesting option at second base, or honestly, you can play him at third. Michael Massey, mix and match piece, and a third man in at second base. You're limited as to the number of second basemen they let you use. He's the least appealing option here, but he does put okay bat on ball. He's usually low strikeout, low walk, so you get around a 35, 38% strike hard hit rate out of him with low bat on ball, high frequency of decent contact, but he's no star. Hunter Renfroe's been lost at the plate for the better part of the last 2 seasons. Drew Waters, Kyle Isbell, just mix and match guys down lineup. If you're choosing to target Chris Bubich, doesn't feel like the right day. I don't love it, but these are your 2 top priority bats in this lineup. Hunter Goodman and Michael Toglia, you're just buying the power upside, 929, 8.07 in the home run model. Neither guy is off to a good start this season. 328 xWOBA is just moderate. 224 is obviously a disaster so far. 4 home runs combined is kind of a mess for the power that is expected from those 2 hitters. But they're the top 2 priority bats, especially with no Tovar. He's on the IL. Mickey Moniak in this lineup now does have a very solid premium contact mark so far, over 58 plate appearances, limited number of batted ball events. 3 home runs on the board. He's probably your next man in. I think he's the 3rd most interesting bat here. And then you've got reliable's the wrong word to use. Just good old Ryan McMahon for 35.25 is at least playable, but lefty is not ideal for that. Kyle Farmer is just a mix and match guy who we liked from down lineup for his odd mid-teens, low teens power when nobody would go to him. But hitting second on a day where anybody who's going to the Rockies would obviously use that at a cheap price. Limited appeal there. Sean Bouchard does have power upside, 1 home run on the board, but just a 272 xWOBA in his 35 plate appearances this year. Just 1 home run in 108 last year, 4 in 43 plate appearances back in 23. Mix and match piece at best up top. Stallings is a cheap catcher option. Could turn on one on the right day, but all you're getting is a cheap square there. Chris Bubich, Royals bats, essentially tied, very highly ranked on both. And then really no Rockies, no Ryan Feltner. Jump into the chat, drop your questions, any thoughts you guys have, anything I've gotten wrong, gotten right. Check out rotoscouts.com. Everything's under $1 a day. Access for MLB projections, home run numbers, the actual home run model numbers, top stacks, home run picks. We haven't gotten to today's home run pick yet. NBA projections, NHL projections for every main slate through the playoffs. Trying to hit a bunch of early slates as well for baseball. Those aren't guaranteed. Main slate is the product, but getting a lot of those taken care of through the week. So check out rotoscouts.com. Also give our guys over at acemind.io a look. Promo code rotoscouts all in caps. Get you 20% off your first month over with those guys. And they have great optimizer and sim tools for basically all the major sports. Lower pricing than most of the people in the industry as well. Chris Caminiti likes Jordan today. I always like Jordan. 10.04 in your home run model. Going up against Chris Bassett, who we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Yet to allow a homer this year. Noteworthy. But definitely a guy who is at least gettable for home run power. Last year, 2.37% home run rate, but that came on a persistently high average launch, 14.3 degrees, 13.2 the year before that, allowed a 3.39% home run rate. He's pretty effective at limiting hard hit, limiting exit velo. So you can clip your wings a little bit in that. And that's a strong attribute. I mean, we're talking about 90 plus starts here over the last 3 seasons of demonstrably low hard hit, low exit velo. And just mid type home runs. 3.39 was the worst year. So he's gettable for power, but it's not the ideal day. You can see that impact more if you look on everybody else and look away from Jordan. And against a lot of other pitchers, he's at 12, 13, 15, somewhere in that territory. So there's a little bit of an impact from Bassett. But if anybody's going to get him, Alvarez is the guy. 3,300, 5,100 also. You're getting him at really good prices. Most notably on FanDuel, I'd say. Do we have this one yet? Where is this lineup? Nope. We do have the Blue Jays. They're in there, though, right? No, they're not. Grab that one. It looks like projected, I think. So, I do think we've got a ton of playability on the mound for Chris Bassett. 9,000, 10-6. My concern there, as mentioned at the beginning of the show, facing the Astros lineup. There are a few more strikeouts to be had in this lineup than in years past, but there's still a lot of threat up top, and there's a lot of their best hitters are very low strikeout. So it could be problematic there. What I think is worse is just how that price bounces off the rest of the board. With him projected a few spots further down from the Chris Sanchez's, Chris Bubich's, and so on of the world, I don't love it at 10-6 on FanDuel. That really doesn't work price-wise going up against the Astros. At 9,000, it's a lot more playable on DraftKings, but I think it is lower priority than the other guys up toward the top of the board. Ronel Blanco on the other side at 76, 71. There is playability there. He's been ugly to start the season. He's been more like the pitcher that I think he truly is than the guy that we saw in a bunch of starts last year. Over 167 and a third, 29 starts. He had a 24.6 strikeout rate, but did walk more than 10% of hitters. Had a 4.09 xFIP underneath that tidy 2.8 ERA. So deceptive numbers on the back of the baseball card. Did induce a 12.9% swinging strike rate, but allowed a ton of barrels. Allowed a fair amount of home runs. Stuff Plus didn't really like the arsenal. Stuff Plus continues to not really like the arsenal. The barrels are slightly up in the small sample. The strikeouts are down. Swinging strikes slightly up. So is CSW, which is odd that strikeouts would be down off that result. Walking 3% more hitters. Kind of problematic numbers for a not as good as his reputation pitcher. But he's not priced like where that reputation has had him in other starts in the past, going back to last year, maybe even earlier this year. So 76, 71. The only issue is the top of the Blue Jays lineup and the low strikeout overall nature of the Blue Jays lineup. So he's going to have to do his work and go find his Ks. But I think at those prices, he's at least a mixer. He's not projected at the top of the board, but he's also not off the board. 4.17 implied total. I'm more interested, I think, in Blue Jays bats than Astros bats. But the problem continues with this lineup. This is a 4-man lineup with odds and ends down the board. All the odds and ends are cheap. But across those 5 hitters, you've got 2 combined home runs in, what is that, nearly 300 plate appearances? 285 plate appearances. You've got 2 home runs combined. They're slashing a combined 215, 289, 274 with a combined 69 WRC plus. Not nice. The only ex-WOBA that's at all appreciable is Nathan Lukes down the bottom of the lineup at 342 over 34 plate appearances, the smallest sample in that group. This is not a good collection of bats from 5 through 6. These guys, 3 out of 4 of them are good. The third one, Andres Gimenez, at least they finally took my advice and moved George Springer to the cleanup spot and moved Andres Gimenez to 3. 198, 286, 349. A 331 xWOBA is at least supporting that there's more upside there. He has scored 14 runs on the season via hitting in front of a hot George Springer. But there's really not much meat on the bone for Andres Gimenez, and he's mispriced at 47 on DraftKings, 3,000 on FanDuel. He's not ever in the universe be priced the same as Vladimir Guerrero. That's insane. 291, 392, 395 for Vladdy, 422 xWOBA, 135 WRC plus. Yeah, he's only hit 1 home run. He's got a 12.3% barrel rate, 57.5% hard hits. The home runs are going to come. Bo Bichette at 44.29 is cheaper than Andres Gimenez on FanDuel. Again, stupid. Cheaper than Andres Gimenez on DraftKings. Stupid. Bo Bichette's off to a 310, 352, 390 start with a 389 xWOBA and 117 WRC plus. What the hell are we doing with Andres Gimenez here? Doesn't make any sense. This is a 3-man stack. It's Bichette, it's Vladdy, it's George Springer, and then the other guys are just mixers. Period. Springer's off to a great start. 2 homers, 4 steals, 206 ISO, 392 xWOBA, making killer contact, looking a lot like the old George Springer. Really interesting bat at 44.31 if you're going to this team. And honestly, getting that 3-man at 45 a piece on DraftKings, 3,000 a piece on FanDuel, totally worth it. Against a gettable starter like Ronald Blanco, I'm liking the Blue Jays 3-man more and more as I'm talking about it. Let me get off this team. On the Astros side, more depth on this side of the equation for sure. There's at least 6 or 7 playable starters here, but you're going up against the higher end pitcher who is off to a tremendous start, is striking out 33% of hitters. And again, there are more strikeouts here. Cam Smith, Brendan Rodgers are targetable for K's down lineup, 29%, 34% so far, nearly 35%. Smith has 3 home runs on the board, a 316 xWOBA, 311 xWOBA for Brendan Rodgers. They're right around the average. We'll see what we get out of those guys in the long term. All they are right now is cheap with maybe a little bit of lingering upside as bolt-on parts. The guy who's really interesting for his cheap prices continues to be Jainer Diaz. Despite the underperformance over 70 plate appearances, just trust the season and a half that we saw over the last year and a half that is the real player. He's just cheap right now. Unless something is truly wrong with them, everything's going to normalize. 9.8% barrels, at least we're getting that. 3,300 on DraftKings where you need catchers. It's a phenomenal price for that bat. Kid's got an excellent hit tool with a little bit of power. Just hasn't been there over 70 plate appearances. Jake Myers is a mix and match piece if he's in the lineup. Realizing that we could check for this lineup as well. Oh, I did that already. Yeah, it's not here. Jake Myers mix and match piece, but Christian Walker at 4,000, 2,600. He got dropped in a season-long league. I picked him up immediately. 4,000 is way too cheap. 2,600 is way too cheap. 7.06 in the home run model. He's hit 2 on the season. He's got a 291 xWOBA, a lot of disappointment as far as the power output and the underlying metrics. I kind of get why the price has dipped, but I'm still a buyer. 10% barrels, 42% hard hits on the season. Strikeouts are up. The walks are around where they ought to be. I've seen too much from this hitter to think that this is actually going to last much longer. So I'm a buyer on Christian Walker if I'm going to Astros, but he's not a reason to go to the Astros. Jeremy Pena is kind of the same thing with less appeal. I'm much more interested in Christian Walker at a discount than Jeremy Pena at around his correct prices. If honestly on FanDuel, not a little bit high. 3,900 on DraftKings is about right. 3,000 on FanDuel, a little bit high. 3 homers, 5 steals, mix and match piece. 372 xWOBA's got appeal in it. Tells us that the slash line could go up a little bit. The contact has been good. 10.4% barrels, 47.8% hard hits. But we've seen Jeremy Pena over the years. We know where he lands. 15 homers, 20 steals, 10 homers, 13 steals. 266, 308, 394, 263, 324, 381. Those are the same seasons over the last 2 years. Isaac Paredes in home games. You're hunting for that left field corner. 41.3% hard hits, low strikeout rate, high walk rate. You get a little bit of correlated scoring upside. You get a little bit of pop when they're playing at home or in certain select other ballparks. Altuve and Alvarez still are stars up top. They're worth any price. 5,000, 5,100 is very cheap for those two bats. So is 3,300 on FanDuel. Get them while they're cheap. You're just going up against a talented pitcher who's pitching very, very well right now. Chris Bassett, we got to do it. He's projected too strongly. Actually, Chris Bassett on DraftKings. Blue Jays 3-man stacks with the 3 obvious guys and the only 3 guys you would want on either site. Chris Bassett on FanDuel at the too high a price. Astros bats. And then Ronel Blanco just kind of slots in. He's very usable. I don't want to talk him down too much because it's a good enough spot, especially with all the, this bottom half. But I don't love it. Just not a big fan of the pitcher. Pirates and the Angels. We've got the Angels bats. We don't have the Pirates. It's Bailey Falter on the mound for Pittsburgh. We are intrigued by these power numbers that we're seeing for the Angels. We're intrigued by the 5-run total for a team that's been explosive in spots early this year, but then has also slipped a little bit. I almost said faltered. 4.91 ERA for Mr. Falter, 4.59 xFIP, kind of just pitching like exactly what he looks like, which is a pretty bad pitcher. 17.2% Ks and 8% walk rate, sub 10% swinging strikes, 27.6% CSW. It looks quite a bit like what he was doing last year when he was incredibly gettable. The one thing he's not terrible at is keeping the ball in the yard, 2.89% home runs last year. Although 2 years ago, in just 14 starts, 80 2/3, it was at 4.9. So maybe a little bit more happenstance than anything else last year. 8.9% barrels, 41.2% hard hits. This year, similar numbers in a small sample, 3.45% home runs. I think we can go homer hunting with some Angels here, given the 13 and change on Mike Trout, the 11 plus on Soler. Zach Neto's back for this team now. That's another really interesting bat that got added to this group. Love the upside for Los Angeles. Let me actually paste that lineup in there. Neto hitting second today. That's even more appealing. I started talking about Bailey Falter so that I could fill time while I was pasting that lineup, and then I just didn't paste the lineup and started talking about the bats. I do think that Soriano is interesting. 83.94 across sites. 19.6% strikeouts so far this season. He keeps the ball down very, very well against the Pirates lineup that has a little bit of power, but also has plenty of strikeouts. They can draw some walks, but they're not great at sequencing. It's not a very good team on the other side. A 3.61 implied total is targetable. So is the strikeout upside. I think Soriano's got more to give as far as the strikeout stuff. 10.4% swinging strike rate at 28.1% CSW. Walking too many guys currently. 19.6% strikeout rate. Last year it was 20.7. In relief work, he was at 30% strikeout guy. 14.8% swinging strike rate. He's got extreme extended average velocity, meaning like he's working in the upper 90s on average and can really juice it up while also keeping the ball down at extreme rates. If he finds the right mix of pitches and makes it work consistently, this is a guy who could rocket up the board as far as what those outcomes look like. Right now, he's just kind of average. 9,400 reflects the upside, I think, on FanDuel. 8,300 on DraftKings, I think, against this team is pretty cheap. So that's a really appealing pitcher as like an expensive SP2 or a cheap SP1. I think you could use him either way. Pirates bats, moderate interest. Like light lower half of the board type interest. But out of the bottom of the barrel teams, they're one I would at least take a shot with because they've got O'Neill Cruz. They've also got Brian Reynolds, Andrew McCutchen. Joey Bart's not completely uninteresting. But they're a very low priority team against this pitcher who's very likely to suppress their offensive upside. Cruz is pulling a 10 plus in the home run model, though. That's noteworthy. 5 homers, 10 stolen bases on the board so far this season. A 393 xWOB is the thing to focus on. Ignore the 227 average. We do not care about batting average. 354 on base. He's creating runs 24% better than average. He's barreled 19% of balls, 54.3% hard hits. O'Neill Cruz is a superstar in the very early stages of his absolute monster breakout season. Get him while he's still affordable because he's going up. Reynolds at 42, 29, 3 homers. Moderate start to the year, 244, 310, 389 is not where we want him, but the 359 xWOBA suggests we're going back to typical territory. 11.9% barrels, 44.1% hard hits, same thing. Striking out a bit too much so far this year. The walks are right around where they normally are. The strikeout rate, I guess, is something to watch. If that maintains a 8-point uptick or 7.5-point uptick, we'll be talking about Brian Reynolds' decline very quickly, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Andrew McCutchen aging well. 1 home run on the board, 333 xWOBA, though, suggests there's more power to come. Doesn't get on base quite like he used to, but a 333 on base is still very effective. 94 WRC plus. Depends on some help from his friends in a lot of ways, but can still hit the ball very hard. 7.3% barrels, 48.8% hard hits, still low strikeout, high walks. So like some McCutchen shares for 4,000, 2,600. Joey Bart at 3,900 has a 6.02 in the home run model. He's carrying a 15.2% barrel rate over a handful of batted ball events and 60 plate appearances. Has a home run on the board this season, a 356 xWOBA, and the small sample is appealing. Last season, kind of got entrenched here over 282 plate appearances. He hit 13 home runs, 198 ISO. It's an appealing catcher bat for a cheap price at 3,900 against, moderately gettable starter. I think I said moderate like 6 times in the last 2 minutes. And Manuel Valdez, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Tommy Pham, Adam Frazier, IKF. Mix and match hitters in like declining order of appeal. Valdez has at least interesting premium contact numbers over the last couple seasons. 10.8% barrels, 51.4% hard hits so far this year. You can see the numbers for yourself right there. So far, hasn't really resulted in much. 1 home run in 83 plate appearances. Nothing to really talk about there. Last year, just 4 in 396. So no results from the good contact, but at least you're buying the good contact. That's like the only appealing thing. Ke'Bryan Hayes sees good hard hit results. He's a solid line drive hitter with a decently low strikeout rate, low walk rate. So a lot of good contact, but he's never really delivered true DFS upside because he's not much of a home run bat, and down lineup in a shaky lineup is not an ideal spot. Pham is on the decline in a big, big way. No home runs, 3 steals over 77 plate appearances, was kind of empty last year. Adam Frazier and IKF are just not appealing bats. Frazier's yet to barrel the ball. Same thing with IKF. IKF's never been a bat outside of a few singles. Frazier every now and then can get into interesting DFS territory, but he's just an odds and ends piece. 4 home runs last year, 13 homers, 11 steals in 455 plate appearances 2 years ago. It's kind of the guy I was thinking of. But at best, he's a mixer. So we're going to Angels bats. That's where we started. That's where we're in this game's breakdown. Taylor Ward up at the top of the lineup in the confirmed lineup now. 45-33. Continues to not match his spot in the lineup as far as his output. 216, 247, 216, a 303 xWOBA. Last year got on base at a 323 clip, was kind of appealing in that spot, but they do have better options for leadoff hitters. So it's kind of weird that they do continue to go back to him in the leadoff role when he'd be a perfectly competent 5-6 hitter, and you could use Nolan Shanuel in that leadoff spot. Alternately, you can use Zach Neto in that leadoff spot. He's a little bit interesting there. So it's just a little bit of a weird lineup fit, but Taylor Ward is very good. He's a good buy at 4,500. 33 is a little bit more highly priced on FanDuel, but 9.07 in the home run model against the vulnerable lefty. Love the upside. Zach Neto. Last season, 8.4% barrels, 38.6% hard hits, over 602 plate appearances. I don't know if everybody remembers this. Zach Neto hit 23 home runs, stole 30 bases. Monster uptick in his talent. Year over year. Year before, 9 home runs, 5 steals. If you remember that year, he was one of the first call-ups from his draft class, if I'm remembering correctly. Saw like a half a season of plate appearances and was just kind of low end, but with a little bit of interesting power upside. Everything came true for Zach Neto last year. 194 ISO, 114 WRC plus, kind of like Joe Adell in terms of people don't really give him credit for the 20 plus homers, the stolen bases, 20 homers, 15 steals for Adell last year. He was interesting as well, but the triple slash underperformed pretty greatly. He was 10% worse than average grading runs, while Neto was just good across the board. He's just been out for the beginning of the season. 10 plate appearances so far. He's got a home run already, 532 xWOB in the teeny tiny sample. Get some Zach Neto at shortstop, 4,000, 3,100. Very appealing. People are going to go there with the run total where it is, with this team going up against this pitcher, and especially with him hitting second. I think he was honestly more appealing as a sneaker option from down lineup where he was projected, but he's in a better spot hitting second ahead of Trout, ahead of Jorge Soler. Trout at 6,000, 3,700 has 8 home runs on the board. Ignore the entire triple slash. 426 xWOB is all you need to focus on. 20.8% barrels, 50.9% hard hits. Jorge Soler, 4 home runs, 263, 326, 461, 124 WRC plus. He's been mashing. Logan O'Hoppy's also mashing, 18.4% barrels. He's hit 5 home runs, 326 xWOB so far for him. Shanuel's a high-end on-base option for 3,400, 2,900. You can get a lot of correlated scoring from him. The xWOBA is underperforming. The premium contact is greatly underperformed each of the last couple seasons, but he's a low strikeout, high walk, good on-base guy. That's why I think he should be hitting leadoff for this team. Lefty, not exactly ideal. He's a cheap fit at first base, but he's not a priority from this lineup. I do prioritize Joe Adell, and I think he'll be under-owned at the bottom, 32.27. Interesting bat for that cheap. Kyron Paris, all of this production that you can see here came in his first 30 plate appearances. The last 30 have been a disaster. We're going right back downhill with Kyron Paris. So don't get excited about that early start. FanDuel's got him priced up. At least on DraftKings, he's cheap and fits at second base. I prefer him at second to Kevin Newman, but I'm not really fishing around for that many Kyron Paris shares. Not a big believer. The 400x WOBA is the big indicator there that like maybe it's sustainable, but I really don't think so. I think we're coming back down. 1, 2, 3. Probably is your 3-man if you're limiting. And that gets us Mike Trout and Soler and Zach Neto for 4,800 apiece. If you stretch to a 5, you probably just go there and you get 4,700 apiece. But you could go this way and take it further down by including Shanuel and get it to 45, or even Joe Adell and get it slightly cheaper at 44.60. So a lot of different combinations from that top 7 for the Angels. So those are your priority bats for sure over there. They're a little bit more of a squeeze and higher priced on FanDuel. Angels bats in a big way. Jose Soriano, really not much from the Pirates outside of a few mixers, some O'Neal Cruz one-offs I would be happy to take. But considering the limitations on power, what I would expect from Soriano on a good day, don't love the Pirates. 3 to go. We'll get through it in the next little bit. I got to get the projections updated on the website. We'll get there. Zach Littell. I'm going to save some time on not talking about Zach Littell all that much. All you need to know, he's given up a ton of home runs, tons of barrels, tons of hard hits so far this year, 5.48 ERA. He does have a 3.98 xFIP underneath that. He's better than he has been this year, but you're not using him against the high-quality Diamondbacks lineup when they're drawing a 5.14 implied total. You can use Brendan Pfaadt. 19.4% strikeouts is a little bit lower than we expect from him. The 5.38% home run rate is a little bit higher than we expect from him. We've seen these weak stretches from Pfaadt before, typically at the start of a season or in like one specific block of starts where he'll give up a handful of home runs, not look quite right, and then everything snaps back into place, and he's just very good. I expect that upside in the long term, but this is a hard-hitting, kind of interesting Tampa lineup. There's only a 19.8% strikeout rate in this current configuration, but if you look in a larger sample, that middle core of hitters right there, 23.4% last year. This year so far with Aranda overperforming, we're at 21.2, but you got vulnerability on their 2 big power bats. Brendan Lau Jr., Caminero, you can get both of those hitters. Lau has actually managed strikeouts a little bit better than typical. We'll see what Caminero is in the long term. You get tons of power ability, 11.65 and a 10.90 in the home run model. The Rays bats are kind of appealing against Pfaadt as a wild card play. They're drawing a sub-4 implied total. They're not going to be popular. They are affordable, but they're bottom half team overall. Diamondbacks are one of the more high priority teams on the board. As mentioned way back at the beginning of the show, I did get involved and make sure that we were appropriately increasing some back-end projections for a couple of these guys so we could reflect more appropriate totals overall and get them where they needed to be on the stacks board. Given that 5.14 implied total, they're very interesting. Corbin Carroll, 104 plate appearances, is 323, 394, 645, a monster 433 xWOBA, mashes baseballs, 9.29 in the home run model, could honestly be a little bit higher, and I'd be a buyer. 6,100, 4,400, he's one of the most expensive players on the entire slate, but if you're going to Diamondbacks, he's an absolute priority. We do have this lineup. Looks a lot like the one we're talking about. Perdomo in the 2 spot continues to be interesting. He's always been a good on-base option. He's hit the ball a little bit harder out of the gate this year with 3 home runs on the board, 3 steals, 392 on base, a 374 xWOBA. Very interesting filler at shortstop for 46.34. Probably more so on DK for a slightly cheaper price. Pavin Smith at 46 versus Josh Naylor at 51 is an interesting enough positional conflict at first base that you could go back and forth with those 2 hitters on DraftKings. Pavin Smith's been good, 382, 485, 691. More importantly, we know that he's made very high-quality contact, both over time in small samples in the majors and throughout his career in the minors. So I think there's a really interesting bat there. I don't think he continues the entire season 120% better than average for run creation, but on any given slate, there's tons of DFS upside, and against this medium-grade righty to bad righty, very, very interesting bat for the prices. If you've got a little bit more to spend, tons of home run upside on Josh Naylor at 8.02. He's got 4 on the season. He's got a 214 ISO, 375 xWOBA. He's stolen 4 bases, which is completely bizarre. Excellent top 4 there, and then a very playable bottom end through at least 7-8. Lourdes Gurriel for 41-27. He's underperformed the start of the season, but he does have 4 home runs on the board, a 190 ISO, and we know that slash line will come up. He's very low strikeout, low walk, so you get a ton of high-quality bat on ball. Very interested for the price if we're going to this team. Gabriel Moreno at 29-23, where you need catchers, super appealing. Hasn't barreled the ball yet this year. He's off to a bad start. No home runs, just a .020 ISO is almost incomprehensibly low. 42.5% hard hits, though. 17.2% strikeouts is low. 13.8% walks is high. He gets on base. He creates runs. He's an interesting catcher for that cheap price in a very appealing lineup with better than a 5-run total. Do not skip that bat on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's just a mixer. But on DraftKings, that's a high priority catcher bat. There's Eugenio Suarez, 18.8% barrel, 62.5% hard hits, 6 home runs on the board, 273 ISO. That's all you really need to know. You get your occasional home runs out of Suarez. That's about all he is these days. But I expect him to perform better than 156, 261, 429 in the long term. 357 on xWOBA suggests that suspicion is going to come true. Alek Thomas is an outfield mixer for a cheap price. 283, 350, 415 over his first 60 plate appearances, solid 357 xWOBA. Last year in 103, he was bad, but the year before, 9 homers, 9 steals in 402. He's one of those down lineup guys who's never appropriately owned on a day where his team is popular. He still falls to like 1% owned, and then that day, the 1 out of 10 days where that's the situation, and he also goes out and hits like a home run, that's the day you bend a slate. Tim Tawa, just kind of a mixer who has not been good over his 33 plate appearances. He has hit 2 home runs and stolen 2 bases, though. Not completely unappealing. The 378 xWOBA is interesting, but we need more of a sample. 9.5% barrels in what's probably 3 or 4 batted ball events, or more like 10 or 12. I skipped over the top of the Rays lineup, by the way. Chandler Simpson, super interesting, 3,000, 2,400. If you're stacking Rays, you are absolutely including Chandler Simpson on both sides. Kid's got a great hit tool. He's going to be an on-base monster. He's going to hit for average, and he's going to steal every time he's on base. Exaggerating slightly on the number of attempts, but this kid is already just, the moment he was called up, he was the fastest man in the major leagues. He stole 100-plus bases in the minors last year, and he can hit. He's never going to hit for power. You are not getting, he probably finishes this year with 0 major league home runs. But you're getting extreme upside for correlated scoring, on-base skills, stolen base bonuses. He goes very well with Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau, and Junior Caminero. Bottom of this lineup is weak. That's where you lose a lot of quality in the aggregate for the Rays. It's really about the top 5 hitters here. Jake Mangum continues to just hit for average and get on base at an effective clip. He's stolen a few bases, but he's not an interesting overall bat, and he's not going to continue to hit like this. I promise you, he's not going to be that good. I know he had good college numbers and so on and so forth. Back in 2018 or whatever it was, he led the SEC in hits. Who cares? Who cares? It's just not good. Or he's not good, but he's aged up. He would have been here by now if he was any good or if he was worthwhile for DFS purposes. He's just a mixer that you bolt on to Rays stacks. I know he's had a few good games. Danny Jansen's a cheap catcher bat, but there's no real quality there right now. 1 home run on the board over 57 plate appearances. Everything else has been atrocious. He's yet to barrel a ball. Cameron Misner at least has barreled the ball, made good contact so far. 9.3% barrels, 44.2% hard hits. 3 home runs on the board with a 357 xWOBA. But there's a lot more to support that Cameron Misner's got a lot of upside than a guy like Jake Mangum. So maybe if you're going down lineup, the 8 spot is one of appeal in this projected Rays lineup. But really, it's that top 5 that has appeal. Lau and Caminero for home run upside. Yandy's got a little bit of home run upside and extreme on-base ability despite the bad start. And then Simpson for his blazing speed and his on-base skills and hit tool. D-backs lineup, Brandon Pfaadt, Rays bats, no Zach Littell. Brewers and the Giants. So given the low totals, both these pitchers are at least on the board for discussion. We're talking about Jose Quintana, who hasn't really been all that appealing outside of a few wild card starts that are impossible to pin down over the last few years. So far this year, a .071 ERA is terrific. That's kind of what I'm talking about. He's obviously limited runs in his 2 outings. 3.82 xFIP underneath it suggests that it's not at all real. 13% strikeouts. There's no DFS appeal there for 8,000 to 8,600. Even against the Giants lineup that does strike out a decent amount. Even with the ballpark the night working against them. I just don't see it. He projects out fine, but that's only competitive projections, and I don't think there's much ceiling beyond just hitting those medians. You need him to go like 7, hit bonuses, and pad strikeouts. Really, really thin play on Quintana. Jordan Hicks at 74-76, 19.4% strikeouts is maybe a little bit more to work with there. He's going up against the lower strikeout of these two teams, but again, the conditions working against him, 3.50 implied runs, not nothing. Stuff Plus does like the Arsenal at a 112 rating. That's one of the better marks on the board overall. He hasn't been good. 6.04 ERA, a 4.37 xFIP. Not exactly stellar numbers, but maybe a little bit more usable at the cheap prices if we're fishing around. Last time out, 7 innings, but gave up 5 earned on 6 hits. Struck out 5, walked 4. That was against the Phillies at Philly. 7 earned runs against the Yanks over 4 innings. 3 strikeouts, 3 walks. Oddly, did not allow a home run. 2 home runs allowed to Seattle in a mediocre start. So not a lot of reliability, but a cheap price at least at 74. Probably more a DK option than a FanDuel option. I don't love it over here. Brewers bats, really looking at the top end of this lineup if we're going here. Plus like Rhys Hoskins, maybe some Garrett Mitchell can work in around the edges. But it's really about Jackson Chourio, Christian Yelich, and whatever's immediately around them. Still just the projected on this one. Turang, tons of speed upside. As long as he's getting on base, he remains interesting. The 354 xWOBA, the contact numbers so far this season, over 100 plate appearances, are very encouraging for the idea that this is a true breakout. He stole a ton of bases last year, but he was otherwise pretty much uninteresting. Much more interesting bat so far this year. Chourio at just 52 is affordable on DraftKings. I won't say cheap, but that's a great price. 100 more for him than Bryce Turang? Yeah. 3,800 on FanDuel. He should be a 4,000 plus player. 5 home runs on the board. Just a 272 on base needs watching. So does the 297 xWOBA, but he is one of the top young bats in all of baseball. 11.8% barrels, 47.4% hard hits. Yelich remains a B plus type star. 4 home runs, 5 steals, 333 on base, a 354 xWOBA, creating runs 6% better than average. Still hits the ball very, very hard. Striking out a little bit more this year so far. I expect that'll come back down to the low 20s. William Contreras, 4,500. Great option at catcher any given slate against this pitcher. You can definitely use him as a one-off. That said, there's probably better cheap one-offs on the board. But he's one of the top catcher bats just overall. 3 home runs on the board this season, 303 xWOBA, 109 WRC+. Frelick, just a hit tool and speed-oriented mixer. Getting him ahead of Rhys Hoskins has some appeal, though. If you're going down lineup, you want them both, because then you capitalize on the correlated scoring potential that he provides. Otherwise, he's just a mixer with a hit tool, and you need him to steal bases or something. Hoskins, 3 home runs on the board, 270, 373, 429, a 334 xWOBA. Very respectable right-handed power upside. Garrett Mitchell hasn't done much this season. There's the idea that there's a good bat there, 7.9% barrels, 44.7% hard hits this year. The 299 xWOBA flies in the face of that. Last year, 214 ISO and 8 home runs over 224 plate appearances helps to support that point. A lot of strikeouts. We'll see what the bat looks like in the long term. He's cheap in the outfield. Joey Ortiz, Caleb Durbin, just mix and match pieces at the bottom of a lower ranked mid-board type team. Top of the Giants. That's where the power is. Those top 4 hitters are pretty much always interesting. Willy Adames dramatically underperforming his new contract with the Giants. 54 WRC plus is half again as bad as the average player. 194, 262, 269 is obviously atrocious. You're just hunting for the return to form. This is a player that we know is much better than these numbers. He's cheap at 37.28 across sites. Elio Ramos is very cheap at the top of the lineup. He's got a ton of power upside, 11.6% barrels, 44.9% hard hits from the right side against a ridiculously targetable Jose Quintana. There's a lot of appeal there. Conditions, again, are working against these bats. That run total reflects that. But if we're just hunting for options late night, that's a really interesting one. 3 home runs on the board, 303 xWOBA. The power hasn't really come through, nor has the on base over his 102 this year, but he was really good in his rookie season last year. Jung-Hoo Lee has been great this year. 3 home runs on the board, 386 xWOBA, 271 ISO. He's been mashing baseballs. Matt Chapman, excellent swing, excellent home run upside on any given slate. 4 homers and 100 plate appearances. Doing Matt Chapman things out there. Very affordable at 46.31. And then you get to the mixers. Wilmer, I know he's hit 7 home runs. I'm very happy for him. 256 ISO. Those homers will come and go. That's who Wilmer is. He's probably going to finish the year with 14 to 17. but any given slate, a little bit of upside, always against the lefty. There's a little bit of upside. At 41.32, he's at least affordable. He can average down the price on Younghoe Lee. Everybody else is already cheap on DraftKings. FanDuel, you're paying a little bit more for this Giants team. DraftKings, that averages down very, very nicely with those two cheap prices up top. Luis Matos at 28.24. An interesting prospect bat. Hasn't shown much at this level yet. Tyler Fitzgerald is definitely interesting. 2 home runs, 5 steals. When we get him in the 9 spot and we can wrap him back around, I think he's actually more interesting than when he's hitting 7, because we could just get those attributes and put him ahead of the bats that we actually want from up top. Ideally, he would just hit even further up the lineup. Patty Bailey is a mixer of a catcher. David Villar is a mixer at third base with a minor amount of power upside. Giants bats, Brewers bats, Jordan Hicks, Jose Quintana in that order. But I wouldn't argue with anybody who ranked the pitchers above the bats, given where the run totals are. And honestly, even the projections kind of lean that way. I'm just not a big believer in either of these pitchers. It's kind of a just shy away from it game overall. It's not a 4 corners game. It's kind of a no corners game. Osvaldo Bido at 7,200. This is our last game up. 7,800. It is 6:09 on your clocks. We'll be out of here in the next 5 minutes or so because we're going to fly through this game. And then I'll get the site updated. That'll take me about 2-3 minutes, and you'll have all the projections that you need with plenty of time to build your lineups. So don't sweat it, gang. Oh, Danger. Danger, I hope the 5-year-old is okay. Danger says, the 5-year-old took a spill while typing, sent apple juice all over the house. What I meant to ask was Schwarber and Keishol or Albies and Adolis. Ooh. That's really good. That's close. I'm going to say the first one. I'm going to say Schwarbs and Keishol. You get at least a little bit of interesting hit tool upside out of Keishol. Who the hell are they playing? White Sox? White Sox. He is hitting third for just 3,000. Dead min price on FanDuel's where he gets really interesting. But this is an okay price. You get a very solid hit tool, and you're pairing it with one of the top home run options on the board. The reason I immediately leaned that way when I looked at Adolis, who was on the screen here, is because Osvaldo Bido's one good attribute is kind of checking home run power, and you can see the impact of that. He's one of those guys. Everybody in this projected Rangers lineup below a 5 in the home run model. That's with the team carrying a 5+ implied total. So while Bido's not necessarily actually good, he has been good at checking power. 1.16% home run rate over 63 1/3 in 9 starts last year. 1.69 over 9 starts, 50 2/3 the year before that. Just 4.4 and 4.3% barrels over that sample. He is a fly ball pitcher, so you can burn him by happenstance, but very low hard hit rate, very low exit velocity, so he's able to limit the quality of contact, and you get a lot of pop out type of fly balls out of him. So taking that opportunity, if we're taking a little bit of power upside away from the Rangers, that very strongly puts me on the Schwarber and Keishol side of that. That said, between Keishol and Albies, if that was a 1-for-1, it's Albies. Yeah, Monty, I agree with you there. Monty saying Jordan in the 2 spot, that's just where he belongs. That's where your best hitter and your best power bat belongs, full stop. That's why I always argue with when we see Judge in the 3 spot. But yeah, that ability to extend plate appearances and work the count for Paredes, that does fit well in the 3 spot. And the 3 spot, traditional baseball was where you wanted your best overall bat, your guy who hits for a super high average, hits home runs, your MVP type guy. But as I've said on this show a couple times this year, turns out that's the spot that comes up most frequently in a game with 2 outs and nobody on. So you don't actually want that guy there, but you do want a productive, semi high-end guy, a guy like Paredes who can hit for a decent average, get on base, and set the table for your cleanup hitter who's going to be a power bat. A guy who still does have a little bit of pop so he can drive in the guys, because it's not going to be every time, obviously, the 1-2 hitters don't get on. So you do still want a high value bat there. So yeah, fully agree, Monty. That's a good call. That lineup does miss Kyle Tucker, though, as D Reward is saying. All right, let's hit this real quick here, because I did say 5 minutes, and we probably already burnt through that. Patrick Corbin, not a play. I don't care that he had a decent start, 3.86 ERA, a 4.10 xFIP over his 2 outings. Last time out, he went 5 1/3. He gave up 1 earned run, struck out 6, walked 1, did not give up a home run. First start, he only lasted 4 innings. He gave up 3 earned on 5 hits. He gave up a home run in that game. He struck out no one against the Cubs. The second start came against the Angels, who were a little bit more high strikeout. He had a good day. This is a pitcher we have targeted for the last 4 or 5 years running for home run upside. Look at the A's home run numbers. Look at the top of the A's lineup. Look at down here. Max Extra Crispy Muncy, 8.54. Nick Kurtz in his debut, lefty, pulling a 9.16 in the home run model. There's massive power showing for the Athletics. Fire away. They're the top-ranked stack of the day for a reason. That said, they're getting up there in price, up at the top of the lineup. Look at these prices now. It is a crime that this team is no longer in Oakland. If you're wondering who the home run pick of the day is, I've hinted at it a few times. It is not that guy. It is not this guy, though it easily could have been one of the top overall numbers on the board going up against the weakest, most homer-prone lefty in the sport. Brent Rooker's a huge spot. He wasn't the pick. Neither was Tyler Soderstrom. Neither was Nick Kurtz down lineup. Neither was Max Muncy. It was Mr. Shea Langoliers coming in at 11.33 in your home run model, 11.9% hard hits, 11.9% barrels, 50.8% hard hits, 5 home runs on the board, a 254 ISO, a 372 xWOBA, Partridge, Pear Tree, etc. 29 homers and 226 ISO last season. Monster power bat. A lot of zeros in your lineup from Shea Langoliers. But out of everybody in this lineup with true power upside, everybody who was above or right around the magic number, I figured he'd probably be the lowest owned FanDuel guy, and then he'll get his catcher shares on DraftKings either way, but you absolutely want to prioritize him on DraftKings. That's how he became the home run pick of the day. I love any one of those top 4 options for a home run today. I love multiple guys from this lineup for home run power. You've got 9 on the board from Tyler Soderstrom, who's been the best player in the league to start this season. 406 xWOBA, 190 WRC+. Brent Rooker, 6 home runs on the board, actually underperforming his talent in the triple slash so far at 234, 280, 468. The 389 xWOBA tells me we'll be fine. So does the contact. Lawrence Butler, an excellent home run and speed option. He's getting on base ahead of those hitters, doing his thing up top of the lineup, can contribute individually or as a correlated scoring piece. Again, Langoliers home run pick of the day, obvious. Miguel Andujar with his hit tool, 297, 343, 375. He's actually been very, very good. He's not going to hit for power, but he is going to get on base and hit for average and benefit from BABIP and being a low strikeout option. Jake Wilson's very, very good hit tool. 354, 500, 334 xWOBA so far this season. Getting on base like crazy. Another guy who doesn't hit the ball particularly hard. They could maybe benefit from a reconfiguration of some of these guys as far as like where they fall in the lineup. But these guys up top are just so good that you can mash them all together and just have all the power bats together. This is a really good lineup. Except for Gio Urshela, 2,800, 2,100. He's just not good. 173, 232, 288. Was never a very good hitter. Came through in a couple big spots, and Yankees fans got excited about him a few years ago, mistakenly. But Nick Kurtz is one of the top prospects in baseball. If you weren't here yesterday, we talked about him when we got the call-up news. Has been mashing in the minors over. He was a draft pick last year. Very limited sample of opportunities in the minors and destroyed the minors to the point where they were forced to call him up. You do have a positional conflict there, which kind of sucks. Gun to your head, it becomes a matter of what matters more. Lineup spot, assuming this is the lineup we get, or cheap price, because the upside is at worst the same. And if you really made me be honest about it, I would say that there might be more upside in the long term on Nick Kurtz. He is that good, or should be that good. Top to bottom, this A's lineup is super appealing today. If you're going up against Osvaldo Bido with a 5.09 implied total on the other side of this game, again, this is the 2 highest totals on, or 2 of the highest totals. One highest at 553, one of the highest at 509. Struggling to get out of this show. 4 home runs apiece for Corey Seager, Wyatt Langford, and Adolis Garcia. That's your pocket of power. That's your upside bats from this team. But again, Osvaldo Bido's one attribute is limiting power. Otherwise, he's allowing a ton of contact. That's why I do believe in that total for sequencing with this Rangers team, more so than I was saying about the Braves. 15.6% strikeouts for Bido, 2.61 ERA, but a 5.35 xFIP underneath it completely betrays it. And again, a fly ball pitcher, any one of these hitters could turn on the ball and drive it out of this yard, especially in this minor league stadium. This is played up very slightly for home run power so far. It's going to be interesting to watch. It's played up a ton for runs. It's played up a ton for singles in a small sample of home games in Sutter Park. But it's only had a minor impact on power, and we actually are not sure how that's going to look in the long term. I did give it its true numbers though for today, and we're still only at this level for the Rangers power output. But if you're going there, Semion's still playable. He's super cheap now at 31.25. Deservedly so, though. He's been awful this season, and he had a down year last year. Wyatt Langford at 44.34. 4 home runs, 3 steals. Very interesting bat. 376 xWOBA. Creating runs 55% better than average. Corey Seager is a dramatically underpriced superstar. I don't know how they arrived at 4,300 on DraftKings. 4 home runs, slashing 288, 350, 479, 418 xWOBA. He's created runs 39% better than average. He's barreled the ball 17.2% of the time. He's got a 48.3% hard hit. I don't know where in the hell did they get 4,300. That's a mistake. That was supposed to be 5,300. You can't convince me otherwise. I know he's been cheap, so it's not actually a mistake, but that I was not prepared to see that number for Corey Seager given the current performance and who we know Corey Seager is. It's just wrong. That's a spectacular one-off at shortstop. FanDuel at 31 is also very, very cheap, by the way. It just stands out more on DraftKings. But 31 is 400 or 500 off the mark easily on FanDuel. Adolis at 4,000, 2,900 has tons of appeal as well. 4 home runs, 4 steals for him. Outside of that, some of the numbers are shaky, but the 406 xWOBA, the 22% barrels, the nearly 60% hard hit rate are super appealing. Josh Smith is a mixer who can hit the ball hard from time to time, typically overperforms for a stretch and then just completely tanks. We're in the overperform part right now at over 52 plate appearances. He's been pretty good. Josh Young, very interesting bat for 31, 32 if you're going to this team. Tons of hard hit. Pretty good option, 280, 280, 460 so far this season. Creating runs 10% better than average. 2 years ago, 23 home runs in 515 plate appearances. And then Jake Berger kind of relegated down lineup a little bit. 2,700, 2,600 for a guy who's off to a bad start over 70 plate appearances, but hit 29 home runs in 579, 209 ISO, created runs 6% better than average last year. He's really interesting if nobody's going to him. So very, very playable Texas lineup. I don't think that Beto is invulnerable to the home run, so you could probably give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt in this column. And the sequencing, the upside should be there. The 5+ implied total is very real with ceiling on it. A's bats, Rangers bats, Beto if you have to draw a pitcher from this game, but don't play Beto. And 0 Patrick Corbin. Do yourself a favor. Stack against Patrick Corbin. That is the show, gang. 6:20. Let me go get the site updated so people can actually build lineups. Good luck out there tonight. You guys absolutely rock for sticking through this thing. No Kurtz in the lineup? That's stupid. The fuck are you going to call him up for and then not play him? I guess the lefty on the mound, they didn't want to expose him lefty to start, but that's dumb. Just play him. We'll probably see him pinch hit. Anyway, that's your show, gang. That was a weird piece of news at the end of the show. Let me get these confirmed lineups up on the site. Just give me 2-3 minutes. I'll get that done. Everything will be up there. Questions in Discord. I'll be around for the next 40 minutes or so building lineups. I'll update NBA and NHL as we go. NHL actually locked at 6, but that was ready to rock. So yeah, stay tuned. Or no, don't stay tuned. We're leaving. All over the place. Thank you very much. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Share a screenshot when you do. We will see you tomorrow for more of this, guys. Later.